You're listening to a podcast from leagueculture.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 36 of League Culture. You're listening to me, Stuart Morris, bringing you 60 minutes of International Rugby League and taking a look at the wider game. We start the show with thanks to League Freak and Everything Rugby League. So, check out leaguefreak.com and the Everything Rugby League Facebook page. Remember, you can listen to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn and leagueculture.com. This show has had an interesting few weeks, dear listener. Last episode we did got a mention in the Sydney Morning Herald, our interview with Robert Bergin. And here's a little bit from the Sydney Morning Herald. A fairly senior person within the game said in an open conversation that rugby league will never be on the stage of rugby union, that it would never spread to more than the countries that it has at present. Bergin told the League Culture podcast. Well, that's something I didn't expect to see some of this show actually appearing in a Australian newspaper. So it just goes to show you never know who's listening to the show. And if you like podcasts as well as this podcast, don't forget you can catch us on your Android device via the Leaguecast app, which is freely available on Google Play, and you can download and listen to lots of different podcasts like us and our great back catalogue with some fantastic guests we've had over the years. Plus you can get to listen to other fantastic shows like Super League Pod, Ladies Who League, Devil in the Detail, White Line Fever, Rugby League Renegades, The Rabbit Will Dawner, Final Hooter, and so on and so on and so on and so on. There's loads of stuff to listen to on there. There's a new Toronto Wolfpack one, Wolfing Around. And the Dominant Tackle as well has appeared on there as well. Just mentioning Robert Bergin, his podcast that he does with Adam Wright has appeared on Leaguecast, The Dominant Tackle, so you can listen to that. Now, if I was going to name two of my favourite shows, two of my favourite podcast/radio shows, I would say it is Rugby League on Radio Yorkshire with Phil Caplan, Mark Wilson, and Gary Schofield, and the other people are on there. I'd say that's one of my most entertaining shows that I really enjoyed listening to. That's fantastic. And the other show I really enjoy as well is the League One show by Ben Hughes. Well, it's a small world. Recently, I got a chance to do some match day announcing at Manchester Rangers, and the club at the day were broadcasting out on North Manchester 106.6, doing a live match day commentary, and they had 20 minutes of air to cover, and I got invited to go up and do 20 minutes at the end of that show, and actually went out and did a bit of live FM radio, which I wasn't expecting. And Ben actually some quite nice things to say. He described us as a social media sensation, the League Culture podcast. Well, that's very nice. And talking of Ben Hughes, which I am, I thought, how can we get a show as good as his show? Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. And Ben Hughes is going to be on later in the show, and he's going to be talking to Phil Fitton, the Manchester Rangers chairman, and he's going to be talking all about Phil's master plan, his blue sky strategy for bringing professional rugby league back into Manchester, and that League One application. So that's going to be something that's definitely worth listening to. But before that, we've got the guy I mentioned before, Phil Caplan, the 4020 editor and radio star of Rugby League on Radio Yorkshire. He's going to be on the show, and he's going to be talking about an historical figure who's recently passed away in David Storey, the man who helped put together one of the greatest British films made, which was, bizarrely enough, about rugby league. So we're going to be talking all about David Storey coming up shortly. And at the end of the show, well, it wouldn't be a League Culture podcast without featuring a show favourite in Monte Gaddis, the American trialist who's come over here. He's been playing amateur rugby league. He's been trying to work his way into the professional game and see if he can get back into that Toronto Wolfpack. So we're talking to him and find out about his adventures in rugby league at the end of the show. And between the Phil Caplan interview and the Manchester Rangers piece that we'll be doing with Ben Hughes, we'll be doing with Phil Fitton. And we'd have to say, thank you very much for Ben Hughes for providing this, and thank you very much for 106.6 North Manchester FM also for that interview. We're covering a bit of international news, so we'll be covering all the many fixtures and results that have happened in the international game. So now on to the Phil Caplan interview.
Thank you for asking me to contribute to your excellent programme. I think Rugby League owes a huge debt of gratitude to David Storey, because he did something that perhaps no other artist has ever done before, and that's brought the sport to a mass audience, but in such a way that his legacy will always be remembered. For people who don't know, he wrote the seminal book This Sporting Life, and then the screenplay of that for the film that came out in 1963. So it was twice Oscar nominated. So again, it shows the quality that was associated with it. All of the scenes were filmed at Wakefield. Richard Harris, who was one of the nominees, along with Rachel Roberts, his co-star, was so impressed with the sport of rugby league. And this is before he was a big name in his own right. I think he'd appeared with Marlon Brando in a film before that, was just beginning to make his name in Hollywood. But he was known as a carousing Irishman, and he met his type down at Bellevue, where all the scenes were filmed. There is a story. A lot of the stories surrounding the film do become apocryphal, but apparently Richard Harris was wanting to get to know some of the Wakefield players who were playing extras in the film, and was taken to one side by Derek Turner and Ken Trail, and asked if he'd like to come out for a drink with them, and the trio disappeared for about 3 days, and filming had to be stopped. So I think that was that kind of a relationship, and at the end of it, Richard Harris was asked to be a director of Wakefield Trinity, so who knows what would have happened. Maybe he was the Russell Crowe of his day. But back to David Storey, I think the fascinating thing about him was he was caught between two worlds. He was the son of a miner who was good enough to play rugby at 18 level for Leeds. But what he always wanted, his passion was always art, but painting in the first instance, and then writing. And he always wanted to go to Slade Art School, but I think his parents thought that art would never provide him with a worthwhile career, so they wouldn't fund it. So he used playing rugby as his ticket down to London, and he was paid something like £400 to sign on for Leeds. I think Dewsbury were the first team that were interested in him, but Leeds made him an offer. They could see that there was a place for him in the A team. He was a robust second rower, apparently quite liked to fight. But the story goes that he got on the train on a Monday and went to art school at Slade, and then got it back on a Friday and played in the A team for Leeds. Certainly the characters that he wrote about in This Sporting Life, and a very famous play called The Changing Room, which if you get the chance to even read the screenplay of that at your local library, it's worth it. And that play was put on, I think, round about 2000, when Bev Risman was asked to be the technical director to make sure that the scenes in it were authentic. But David Storey got all his characters for rugby league from playing for the Leeds A team. So he originally was an artist, went to Slade, got thrown out. By then had started writing This Sporting Life, and becomes known as one of the kitchen sink northern dramatists of the early 60s, but wrote some absolutely fabulous stuff, not just about rugby league. There's other books he's written called Present Times and Savile. But if people like to read a good gritty novel, then certainly catch up on David Storey's oeuvre.
I don't know too much about his books, but I know, was it Savile? That was an award-winning book. That won the Booker Prize, did it?
It did. That shows again the quality of his authorship. I think going back to right at the very beginning, when you very kindly said, tell us a bit about David Storey. I think he got this gritty realism from the North, but it was more than that. The story of This Sporting Life is essentially a love story that's set to the background of rugby league, but it's the realism that stood the test of time. I think there are some films from that era that look slightly dated, but you watch This Sporting Life, this weekend, and you'll be able to recognise that although rugby league has changed, a lot of the values of the sport are still within that not just the film, but I would really recommend reading the book where the characters get developed a bit more. It left a massive imprint on cinema in the early 60s, directed by Lindsay Anderson, who did If and a lot of other similar type films of great gritty realism. But Storey was the one that worked on it not just as a novel but as a screenplay, and that's a very, very different art to go from the description of a book into the dialogue of a screenplay, and he did both absolutely effortlessly.
Well, it's a very believable story. I mean, it's highly dramatic, but the story is it's not far-fetched, is it? There are people that you meet, certainly historical figures in rugby league, who you can identify aspects of their life with the film.
Yeah, again, a lot of it is about loneliness, and although the lead character played by Richard Harris is celebrated and feted and paid for his deeds on the rugby league field, and if you like, I read in one of the reviews, obviously the obituaries of his death, was that this book was written in the early 60s. The film was in 1963. It was coming out roughly about the same time as the Beatles were starting to make their name, but until we sort of had groups like that, we didn't really have a concept of celebrity culture. Now we take that for granted. In some respects we crave it, but in those days it was almost like painting the rugby league player who was so wanted by the management of the club as a celebrity, but it deeply lonely. He went and took digs with the Rachel Roberts character, who was a widower from her husband originally being killed in a mining accident, always used to have his boots on the fireplace as homage to him. And it's almost this unrequited love between the two, the love that dare not speak its name. And behind that is why this guy is such a hero in the community, and how fearsome he was on the rugby field. And yes, it's a game that you wouldn't recognise now. It's a lot of the softening up period, as it was called in the 60s, when forwards used to take the law into their own hands. There's a very famous scene where I think the character of Richard Harris gets upset with one of his own teammates because he's not getting the ball enough, and he decides that he's going to take retribution on his own player when they pack down for a scrum. And as they do, Harris swings his fist and hits his own player, who then gets up from the scrum with all his face blooded, and immediately an opposition player is sent off because it's assumed that they've done it. And whilst we don't have anything like that in the game these days, it all is done in such a way as those of us who were around in the 60s and 70s and saw that kind of thing as the norm, it's incredibly believable. But it's all about creating character, and he does it absolutely brilliantly.
Well, it creates a very grim vision of the North, but it doesn't create a vision that's patronising. It almost creates a kind of gladiatorial contest on the screen.
It's unsentimental in the sense that it's deemed to be a hard life. But again, I'm not sure. Yes, it's rugby league, therefore it is the north of England. It involves the coal mines, therefore it is the north of England. It's a rugged, robust game, therefore it must be the north of England. But actually, it's a lot more than that. If you want to leave it as just a stereotype, then fine, it'll fit it. But actually, that's like saying, Romeo and Juliet's just a love story, or West Side Story is just a variation of Romeo and Juliet. At the heart of this is relationships. And sometimes the love that dare not speak its name, and whether that's set in the cold, hard northern England rugby field, or if it was set down south next to a railway track, it's the quality of the writing more than the actual setting. We love it because it portrays our game, and yes, you could say in some respects it is characteristic of what people associate with rugby league who aren't brought up with it. But I just think it's a perfect backdrop for the story that they're trying to tell. Well,
yeah, it's certainly a very modern story in some respects. I mean, it's almost like the story of the sporting tragedy. I mean, if you see films like The Wrestler and stuff like that, it almost has this tragic rise to fame and then this inevitable descendancy at the end of the film.
Yeah, I guess you build people up to knock them down. There's all of that in it. What constitutes a team as opposed to an individual, relationships within the dressing room. There's the hierarchical structure as well between the people that own the club and think that they own the player by virtue of that, and the player trying to get his independence and his worth and holding out for a bigger contract. There are issues in there that are far more than just a backdrop to the overall story, but you'll only take out of that the sort of things that you're looking for. I think as a rugby league fan, you'll love that kind of things. But whether you are or not, it's a sporting context within which the rites of passage of rugby players and widows are all and loneliness and shame and all of the the vices and virtues of life are all contained in the film. It's brilliant to get it in that hour and a half. The book, which fleshes it out a lot more, is even better.
Well, I'm definitely going to pick up a copy of the book now. You said it's something that I've not read, and I feel almost I need to read it now after watching what a fantastic film it is. And it's obviously more than Rugby League, because it wouldn't be in the top 100 list of BFI films that got published.
Absolutely. I think as a work of art, a cinematic art, it stands the test of time. I think we look at it because we're very proud of it. Again, with the greatest respect to a film like Up and Under that was adapted from a stage play, that almost is a caricature of rugby league. It deals sort of in stereotypes. It tells an interesting tale, but this is actually a work of art. This is something that students of film at university will be talking about with generations to come, with the realism, the fact that the photography adds to the atmosphere and the impact, the dialogue, what's not said often as much as what is. The fact that you have sympathy and empathy with all of the characters, whatever obviously their role in the play is. I just genuinely think that if you watch it as a piece of cinematographic art, you will enjoy it. If you watch it as a rugby league fan, you'll actually enjoy it even more.
Yeah, I mean, just as the social context, I mean, it's obviously a film that's set in the 1960s, and there are a whole series of issues of identity there. People wanting to change the fortunes and just thinking about how they imagine themselves in society.
Well, that's where I think, again, it's part of the Northern kitchen sink drama that was being written at the time. So you've got things like Billy Liar, written by Keith Waterhouse, who was from Leeds. Who, again, it's all about, does the lead character get on the train and risk everything and go to London at the end of it? I won't spoil it for people that hasn't seen it. The Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner, written by Alan Sillitoe, turned into a film around about the same time. He was based around the Nottingham area, Room at the Top. There's all of these. It's a genre around that time, and some of them, as we said earlier on, do look like the product of their time. For some reason, perhaps I think it's that combination being so visually well filmed by Lindsay Anderson, of which he absolutely loved this kind of thing, and the quality of the writing from David Storey, that this one just does stand the test of time.
Well, the man who filmed it, I don't know if it was Lindsay Anderson who filmed it, but I know he went on to do films such as Superman later on, so he was obviously a very talented filmographer.
Yeah, I think a lot of people cut their careers in this film as well, but there are still people. The crowd scenes, for example, were filmed at a game between Wakefield and Wigan at Bellevue. Now, if you speak to everybody who says they were there that day and as an extra, there were 470,000 people in the ground. Actually, there wasn't. It was a standard league game. They just happened to use the crowd figures. But there are so many people that want to associate themselves with growing up at that time, coming of age, being part of wanting to be part of that film. I think everybody in Wakefield who was a rugby league fan claimed they were there. Obviously, they weren't. But the other thing we shouldn't forget is this was the halcyon era for Wakefield Trinity. So the 60s, when they went to Wembley virtually every year, they were so close to doing the double in 68. This was the time when Wakefield Trinity were at their absolute best. So to even take the film there's almost a bit of rugby league history being captured as well as the film. It works on so many levels.
Yes, it's a fantastic film. And did you get a chance to meet the man?
No, I would love to have done. He ended up living in Hampstead. So he'd long left Leeds before I realised he'd even played for the club. He wasn't. I don't think he was there after 1960, 61. I think he may have played for the A team, but he then moved on by then. So no, never had the chance to meet him. There's a few people that have been checking this week whether he did make a first team appearance, because had he done so, he would have been given a heritage number by the club. But sadly, he never did play first team. So He hasn't got that. But more than that, I think the game should do something to commemorate him and to mark this sort of seminal vision and literary legacy of the sport in its finest show. I don't, what we should do, I'm not sure, but I definitely think maybe even in journalistic area of rugby league, we should perhaps have the David Storey Award or something like that his name needs to be perpetuated by the sport. Because, as I say, I don't think anybody has ever done as much to spread the word of rugby league outside of its traditional public as this book will continue to do for years to come, and the film always will.
No, I mean, I know in my own experiences, I ended up writing an essay, if you like, on the film This Sporting Life, but I only did that because I chanced upon it in an arts magazine. And
Right.
How often do you see rugby league appear in an arts magazine?
Well, rugby league has only ever appeared on the front cover of Sports Illustrated magazine once, and that was through David Storey's play The Changing Room when it went onto Broadway. So again, you know, his legacy for the sport will outlast us all.
That's fantastic. And Phil, yourself with your magazine 4020, how's that going?
Well, we enjoy it. We wanted to be different when we set it up. We wanted to be feature driven. We wanted to have people involved who were actually at the heart of the stories they were writing rather than necessarily just passing an opinion. We wanted new writers, new photographers, new illustrators, just a new, I guess, perspective on the sport of rugby league. And the interesting thing, I think, is we've sort of got that. We've got female writers, we've got different types of columnists, we've got a nostalgia element. We've even got a bit at the moment with Martin Kellner that doesn't always have a lot to do with rugby league, but why wouldn't you want the great Swinton fan Martin Kellner writing in your magazine? So I think we've tried to link rugby league with other culture. It's not just necessarily about the sport. You're entitled to like film, music, books. The one that's out at the moment, we got the story on Wigan doing ballet. So we're trying to tie up all the different areas of rugby league. There's the international element. The front of the magazine is 5 Drives and the Kick, which is 6 completely independent pieces of writing that, if you read them all together, give you a snapshot of the game at its various different levels. So we've tried to be different, and I would hope that maybe we've achieved that, if nothing else.
I think it's great. It's almost sort of going back to the past, really, for the future, because I think the trouble now with newspapers and magazines is I already know the scores and I've already got my own opinion, so it's difficult for newspapers these days to be relevant.
Yeah, it's a changing world, and we've seen by the sad demise of Rugby League Week that everything these days is instantaneous. So you can be, I don't know, following your Twitter feed while the NRL's on, and all of a sudden, not only have you heard that somebody scored, but they're clipping the try. You know, it's as instant as that. You know, 12,000 miles away, and you're getting the information as it happens. So that does change slightly the dynamic of people who rely solely on news, and I appreciate that's a really difficult area to be in. I think the corollary of that is that there are still people that want a longer read, but they obviously you can't break stories, and by the same token, you can't tell them something that they don't already know. So we have a match of the month. Well, we're not going to tell you in great detail when the tries were scored. What we might do is put that match in context and say it's a Challenge Cup tie. Let's look at the future of the Challenge Cup, or it's the World Club Challenge. Let's see how this result is going to impact on that as a concept in future years. So I think that there is a case for creatively using information that people already know, but this is more to do with the diversity and quality of the writing, hopefully, and you know, whether it's an interview with a player who may have gone on and done something brilliant or been dropped by the time you read it, the article in itself stands on its own 2 feet because it's a great piece of writing.
And of course, because it is available digitally, anybody who's listening to this podcast across the world is able to pick up a copy of it.
Yes, again, something you've got to do these days. We have subscribers throughout the world, certainly Australia, New Zealand, places like Spain and France, who still like a hard copy posted out to them, because there is nothing quite like browsing through something for 2 or 3 weeks until the next one comes along, and maybe creating your own little library or referring back to something that you half remembered in the middle of the night if you're middle-aged. But if you want it instantaneously as it comes out, then yes, it is digitally available, and you can download it the minute each new issue comes out on the 13th of every month.
Well, there's certainly a market for people who prefer paper copies. I've tried to present my dad with digital stuff, but he won't have any of it. He still makes me go out to the paper shop and get him a paper copy of 4020 for you.
Well, you know where most men read their magazines. You can't really do that digital.
No, I suppose it's a hygiene issue there, really. And also, you're on you've got your own radio show these days. You're on Rugby League on Radio Yorkshire, which I think is probably one of the most entertaining shows of the week, and probably one of the funniest. I don't know if it's supposed to be the funniest show of the week, but it certainly comes across that way at times.
Well, it's extremely kind of you to say so. It certainly isn't my show. I'm merely the antidote to Gary Schofield. It's the idea of the guys at Radio Yorkshire to do something regularly. It's interesting because you're very kind to say it's funny. It certainly is never scripted. We have no idea what the topic's going to be, a lot of which is set by the people who are listening. I think it's mainly the interaction that might come over as being funny, because we've had that said to us, and we've all sort of looked at each other and said, well, we didn't crack any jokes, or can't remember any anecdotes that were told. I think the principle behind it, which has been tried in various different ways, it was what the original back chat was on Sky, is it's 4 people sat round in a pub chatting about that week's rugby. And if one is going to try and score a point off another, or self-deprecate, or perhaps, get one up over their mates, then that's what you do in the pub with your friends. So if it comes over as that and it's funny, then I think that's great as a byproduct of what it is. But it's just trying to give some long airtime to the sport, to discuss things in detail. So if somebody says something, you've got the time to challenge it if you don't agree with it, or if you want to put a point forward, or an explanation, or a reason why you think something might happen, or an alternative viewpoint, you can do that, and that can be allowed to run its course until the next topic. It's not really, you've got 2 minutes, we need an instant reaction, what's your take on that, let's move on. So perhaps because it's slightly different from the time element, it might come over as that kind of interaction. But if it's funny, great. But I can assure you, we don't plan any of it in advance.
No, I mean, it's almost got the elements of situation comedy, because you've got such a contrast of personalities there in the studio, and your opinions obviously differ from time to time, and it's that interaction as you find that disagreement and agreement throughout the show that just makes it such an entertaining and informative piece of entertainment for the week.
Well, you're very kind, and I know obviously I think the listening and the viewing figures are going up, and the station are very pleased with it. But it is more to do with the fact that the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel with the people that you're doing it with. So I think you get to learn what the boundaries and the limits are, and what you can get away with, and what's not going to be taken personally more than anything else. I think that's the great thing. We all love the sport, so nobody's going to say anything that is going to be perhaps to the detriment of it. If it needs holding to account, if it needs criticised, if it needs questioning, absolutely you should do it. But the people that are involved in the show have a genuine love of rugby league, and that's something they all share. And if that can come over, even if they don't agree on the way forward, and I know Gary Schofield definitely couldn't be called an expansionist in any shape or form, whereas I always have been. There is topics there that are going to come up where you're going to be on the opposite side of the fence, but what you respect is that fence, and if that comes across and people take sides, or people agree with one, or think somebody else is making a ridiculous point, or if we can laugh about someone's viewpoint but constructively rather than destructively, then hopefully all of that makes a decent listen. Certainly whenever we finish, we look at the clock and go, that was never 2 hours.
I just think it's got a great warmth to to it, and perhaps that's the secret of the success of the show. It's perfect for a Monday. You know, you're feeling a bit fed up, you put that on, and I think you end the show with a smile. I took plenty of your time there, Phil Caplan. Thank you very much for speaking to us, and we appreciate your words with the tribute to David Storey.
It's always a pleasure, anytime, anything to further the cause of rugby league, you know that.
And here now on the League Culture podcast, we're going to do the fixtures and results. Starting from, on April the 8th, we had 9 teams entering the Oslo Nines tournament, coming from Norway and their Scandinavian neighbours, Sweden. And the final of that was the Stavanger Storm against the Swedish Roosters, and that finished 14-4, with the Storm being declared champions. On April 9th, we had the Polish Nines tournament taking place, which saw a final of the Vata Piotrków against the Wild Bears of Tasmos, and that finished 18-14 to Piotrków. April 22nd, we saw the start of the Dutch League, and also on that same day, we saw the Hong Kong Nines take place, with the final consisting of the Diamond Chiefs of Papua New Guinea versus the Isan All-Stars, and that finished 25 points to 8 in favour of the Diamond Chiefs. April 23rd, we saw in Vanuatu the Port Vila competition take place, and in round 1 we saw the Ifara Blackbirds defeat the Pangol King Sharks 40 points to 24. And as of this weekend, which is April 29th, the Los Angeles Nines was taking place in Chile, and also that weekend was the French Magic Weekend in Carcassonne. And in May, we will see, on the 3rd, the State of Origin in Poland between the Red and the Whites. And the Dutch League will be playing 6th of May to the 3rd of June. And the May the 5th, we will see Australia versus New Zealand. May the 6th, Lebanon versus Malta. And on the same day, we've got PNG taking on the Cook Islands, Fiji taking on Tonga, Samoa taking on England, and the Spanish Grand Final of the Tigres Torrent playing Custodians. May 13 and May 20th, we see the Parish of Origin series taking place in Jamaica. And May 27th, we see Nines again in the form of the British Columbia Rugby League Nines. It's the 5th annual Impact ProWare BCRL International Nines. And before that, the week before that, on the May the 20th, we've got the Philadelphia International Nines. Rolling into June, on the 3rd of June, we see the start of the British Columbian Rugby League as well. And also on June 3rd, we see Lebanon versus Italy in Beirut. June 10th, we're getting into Finals Day in the Netherlands. And also on the same day, we've got Italy versus Spain in Italy. And on June 17th, we've got Norway taking on Sweden in Oslo. July 22nd, we've got USA versus Jamaica. August 26th, we've got Canada versus Jamaica in Kingston, Jamaica. And in Toronto, on September the 16th, Canada will be playing the USA, which interestingly enough, I think is the same day as a Toronto Wolfpack fixture in the same stadium. On October 13th, we see France take on Jamaica in the south of France. And just going back through with some results that I haven't really got definite dates for, and that is, we've got in the Ukraine, Kiev, they won 50 points to 10 against Korabel. We've got Mukachevo, 6, Solkol, 56. In Greece, we saw their league finish as such: Rhodes Knights, Attica Rhinos, Patra Panthers and Aris Eagles with the grand final yet to be confirmed between Road Knights and Attica Rhinos. Round 1 of the Balkan Super League had begun, and that has started, and we've got some confirmed results for that. We've got Vitesse Rugby Club 10, Partizan 66, and Red Star. Well, they thumped Dortchul 46-0. In Thailand, we had, in the northeast of the country, the Ubon Wild Bees being declared champions after defeating the Lions in the True Visions Cup Grand Final. After winning their previous encounter between the two sides, the Bees went to the game as favourites and kicked off the match in a convincing style. The domestic competition run by the Rugby League 13 Sports Association (Thailand) featured 4 sides from across the northeast Kingdom of Thailand. This is one of multiple domestic initiatives being run by the national body. Rugby League is set to feature again in the lead up to the next year's Commonwealth Games tournament on the Gold Coast after the proposed second Commonwealth Championship was endorsed by the Commonwealth Games Federation, something that I'm very excited about because I actually personally went down to watch the first event when it was in Glasgow, and this is following on from the inaugural championship in 2014, which I've just said I went down to see that in 2014. It was brilliant. Rugby League 9s will feature as an exhibition sport again, as the code continues to push for inclusion as a medal of 8 for the 22 Commonwealth Games. Just like 2014, the 2018 championship will be age restricted. Last year I think it was under 19s. This time round, the last tournament was under 19s. This time round it'll be under 23s. So again, they'll be looking to use the same squads of players, I would imagine. The championship will take place in Brisbane on February the 23rd to the 24th. And the teams are yet to be finalised. However, hosts Australia will be defending against the champions Papua New Guinea, plus England and South Africa have all said they will feature. The championship is expected to include between 8 and 12 nations. In 2014, we saw Wales, Scotland, Jamaica, Canada, Australia, Scotland, England and South Africa play, and that was the tournament where Canada really shook that up with taking quite a hefty victory over England in a surprise opening game for Canada in that tournament. We saw what Canadians can really do when they play rugby league. And that was by a squad of players that had come from rugby union, not really played rugby league. So an interesting tournament for people to watch this. Other rugby league nations which are eligible to take part in the Commonwealth Game Federation sanctioned event include Cameroon, the Cook Islands, Fiji, Ghana, Kenya, Malta, New Zealand, Nigeria, Niue, Norfolk Island, Northern Ireland, Pakistan, Samoa, Sierra Leone, Solomon Islands, Tonga and Vanuatu. Now we move on to our interview with Phil Fitton of Manchester Rangers, kindly provided by 106.6 North Manchester FM, and Ben Hughes, who is doing the interview. Enjoy.
I worked for the Rugby Football League for 7 years, covering Salford, Manchester and Trafford as an area manager. And I just saw great potential in Manchester for professional rugby league and obviously developing talented athletes as well. Once I actually left the RFL, it's now getting on for almost 5 years ago, I think, I approached the council and asked them if I could bring professional rugby league back to Manchester, and they gave me the go-ahead. Yeah, it was to bring professional rugby league to Manchester, but it was that fact, there's been a 60-year absence in rugby league in Manchester. Manchester are crazy about the history, whether it was sport or science or, something else. They love it. So when we started looking into who played in Manchester, what that history was, it just made a lot of sense for us to adopt the Rangers brand. Now, obviously, from a marketing point of view, Manchester is a worldwide brand. So we dropped the Bellevue Rangers, created Manchester Rangers, with a view that within 5 to 10 years we became a professional club.
And we'll come back to the Bellevue connection, because you've kind of, on the community side, you kind of brought it back in a way with the Bellevue Bees, but we'll come to that in a second or two. But from your past experience then on the RFL, with that development of the game, obviously we know about clubs like Oldham, like Rochdale, like Salford, like Lee, like Swinton. There's always been a game of rugby league being played somewhere in Greater Manchester, but it's never been in the middle. We hear about expanding the game to other parts of the country, but here there is a game to be developed here, and an audience to see it, I feel.
Yeah, there is. We saw that, and it has been tried. There have been numerous clubs before us, and they've give it a really good go. But they never had stability, so they never had a facility. They've never had the number of partners that we've got with the 2 universities, the college, Manchester City Council. You know, we have a relationship with the guys next door at the Etihad. So we've done it differently. So we've almost built the club up, concentrating on our structure, the people involved, the board, the facilities, the investment. The rugby league is almost a byproduct because it's a fairly new sport to the city. So yeah, the focus has been on building a brand and building a sport.
You talk about the ground up, and one of the things when you talk to expansion clubs in the south of England is the need to develop a junior base. We hear about things like Skytry and that kind of thing. It is important not just build a brand, but also to build pathways into the sport as well. And that way you get things like the parents watching and so on and so forth eventually when the kids do develop into fully grown rugby league players.
It is, and we've employed at times 3 full-time staff to develop rugby league in Manchester. So targeting 6 high schools and God knows how many primary schools. And that focus has been just letting young people understand that there's more out there than football in Manchester. And as you said before, all the hard work is now starting to pay off with Bellevue Bees.
And we'll come to Bellevue Bees now. It's a nice little nod to the history, but it's also there was the East Manchester Partnership trying to get a legacy going from the Commonwealth Games, and part of that was the things like the Regional Athletic Stadium where Manchester Rangers play, but it was also the new stadium at Bellevue and the legacy and Manchester Rangers have got themselves involved in that.
Yeah, so being involved in rugby league in the city, they've been building towards the development of Bellevue. And actually what the council have done there is they've ring-fenced usage for rugby league. The school next door, St Peter's, massive rugby league school. Jim Dixon, the deputy head there, they've really pushed for rugby league there. So it was natural for us to say to the council, listen, you build that facility, we'll commit our staff to developing junior rugby there. We'll also use it as somewhere for our open 18 to train, which we did for a season. And we've turned it into a bit of almost a hub for rugby league. So schools finals take place there, primary school competitions, and we've got people from out of the area coming and holding like Poland Rugby League. They're looking to hold camps there. So we've really turned it into a focal point for rugby league in Manchester. Then obviously Manchester East Arena is where we base our first team from. So we're making the most of that legacy, like you say, and actually investing our own time, money and resources into developing the game in the process.
And if we talk about developing the game and big splashes, there was obviously the academy announcement as well, and the partnership with Manchester Met. It's cracking stuff, that.
It is, and that I was involved in a model for Salford City College and Salford Met Devils back in the day, and you could see what it meant to the lads and to the club as well. And moving into Manchester, and people had tried it and they've done it in different ways, but we had a really good think about it. We spent a couple of years developing a plan, and we approached the Manchester College and we said to them, listen guys, we want to create a true pathway from high school to college to university in Manchester, something that it hasn't really been done in the UK before. And the college bought into it in a big way, so they've agreed to, from September this year, to run a full-time rugby league academy. The Manchester Metropolitan University, they've offered us the use of Platt Lane Sports Complex, which is now their home for sport. And, we're going to have young lads, 16 to 18, trainers, full-time athletes, playing rugby league, hopefully representing Manchester Rangers in the British Colleges Leagues. And I think it could be the start of something great there in terms of developing talent.
And I think Gloucestershire Old Goals have done something. They've got the university connection, and Old Goals beat Keighley a couple of weeks ago, and everyone went, "Oh, blimey, it's working!" And I think that it's a cracking way of developing talent and developing players.
It is, and it's cost effective as well. Some of these academies that Super League clubs are running, they cost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds each year. The way we're doing, actually, the college get money for the education of the young people, and as part of that education, they're entitled to take part in sport, and it's part of their education, and it is cost effective. And down in Gloucester, Lionel and the guys there, they've done a brilliant job. People have this idea that southern teams aren't as strong as northern teams, but as you just said there, they're now competing and beating northern sides, which was always the goal for them, and it's great to see.
So when it comes to this season then, in the North West League Division 2, what are the aims? Is it to compete, or is it to develop pathways into the first team, or to improve coaching, or what is the aim? Is it for silverware?
It's not the silverware. I mean, silverware is great. Everybody loves silverware. It is development. We're developing rugby league in a city that hasn't had this level of rugby league for many years. It's about engaging people. It's about bringing new people into the sport. So we have a lot of lads who never played rugby league before. Generally is. I suppose it's about consolidating, making sure we don't get relegated. Mid-table finish would be fantastic. Playoffs would be great. Winning the league would be outstanding. But no, it's definitely about developing the game. And these guys are amateurs. We don't pay any wages or expenses. We're sticking by the fact that we are an amateur club. Everything else is professionally run, but great. It's great watching them develop. It's our third season playing as Manchester Rangers, and we've come up 2 divisions. It's our second year in the second division, and we've gone leaps and bounds. Everyone's enjoying the rugby. We're enjoying watching it. The lads are enjoying playing it. We train at fantastic facilities. We're just happy to be here where we are. I think that's key, really.
So the club's been in existence now for, I think this is the 5th year, and it appears whenever you hear about press releases from Manchester Rangers, it does make a bit of a splash. I mean, there was the League One application last year, and obviously there's a North Manchester FM partnership, which is cracking stuff. But yeah. It feels like the club is going in one direction, and that direction is to League One, but there are a lot of hoops to jump through. What kind of things does the RFL require of a club to make an application? Because it's easier said than done.
Well, as we're informed, there's no real application process. It's building a business case. So making sure that the club's viable, has the facilities, has the structure. So we've worked with the RFL now for probably about 3 years properly on the ground, developing a business plan, developing a business case. Making sure that as a club we could cope with, going from amateur rugby league into a professional game, and then developing in, hopefully, in 10, 15, 20 years' time into a Super League club. That was always the ambition. Last year we submitted our business plan. We got a little bit of feedback. We were told at that point that obviously there were maximum teams for the competition, 40 teams across 3 divisions. So now we're looking at our options. Are they going to expand the number of teams in the future? There's a number of different options for us going forward, but we're just constantly making sure that people see how well we run, what the potential is, who our partners are, and that we are developing the game, because, like I said before, it's crucial that there are kids coming through and potentially becoming stars of the future.
And how important is it that Manchester becomes part of the expansion game as well?
I think if you follow rugby league press or just sports press in general, the biggest clubs are in major cities. And what's happened in rugby league over the years is, in a city like Manchester or Liverpool or London or Birmingham, when you've got 1 million, 1.5 million people in a very, very small area, the potential's huge. You don't need a massive percentage of that population to be watching a team in order for it to thrive, really. So there is that, but there's also the commercial side. Manchester, it's a hub, isn't it, for massive blue chip companies. It is key, really, that the sport does expand into big cities.
Now, let's talk about on the pitch, because obviously we mentioned it there. Manchester Rangers currently is an amateur side, and to make that leap, it is a big leap.
It is. Like in any sport, professional rugby league, football, rugby union, cricket, you sign players. You go out there and you find players that fit specific positions within your squad. Really happy where we're at with an amateur club. We've got 60 plus players playing for us. they come and play for us because they want to play for Manchester Rangers, and we've got some very good players. Moving forward, we potentially keep some of those players as part of our first team, but we go out and sign players, hopefully from the greater Manchester area, so we're not travelling all over the country to find players.
Now it's time to wake, hustle and grind. What's most likely to be for the last time on this show with Monte Gaddis.
And it's just been an awesome journey. But, I'm headed back to the States tomorrow, actually. But right now, I'm just going to tell you what's been going on. 2 weeks ago, as you know, I went to Amsterdam for the Rotterdam Nines tournament. I played for the Amsterdam Cobras. And, man, I had the time of my life. I got a chance to see the Netherlands, got a chance to play against a team from France, a team from the Netherlands, and also a team from London, the West Warriors, which was the team that won it. But we ended up, the Amsterdam Clovers, we ended up taking third place. I scored 3 tries. The Nines tournament has so much more space on the field for me to show my footwork and speed, and I loved it.
This Nines tournament that you was at, which teams did you beat on the way?
Oh, we beat a team from France and we beat the team from the Netherlands.
So is it Nantes that you beat, and then you went on to play? Was it Hardwick that after that?
Yes.
And then you went down to West Warriors. Well, they did well. The West Warriors, they went on to play Swansea in the final, and it was West who won the tournament overall, with Swansea coming second, and you got your third place medal with Amsterdam Cobras.
Yes, I was happy about that. Got a chance to take some hard work back home, show my friends and family about, my trip off to the Netherlands. Even though I was in the UK, I got a chance to see another country from rugby league.
Oh, we got to see a clip of you doing a ball steal, and then you did a good run onwards, and then you got the ball out and set a try up.
Yes, and hopefully between this week and next week, you'll be able to see my tries and more of my big hits and chase downs that I had. It was a fun time for me, I can really say that that was my chance where I show everything and what I can do on the rugby pitch.
So you enjoy playing Nines?
I really do.
Good.
Also coming up, I believe this week, Friday, April 28th, Rugby League World, I'm going to be issued in the magazine. I had an interview with them, and the issue is finally coming out, and I just can't wait to see it. I'm definitely going to have someone send me a magazine copy, to America. As you know, we don't have those issues coming out yet. I'm just excited to see about that. The more exposure, the more positivity behind my name, it's always a blessing.
Oh, that's good. That's really good. Oh, well, we won't talk about it because obviously the magazine's got to come out and they've got to sell a copy of that. So we'll let people read that for themselves and find out what's in there. Now, have you been on TV as well?
Oh, yes, I have. All right, I was going to keep it top secret, but I want to let you start it off and let people know, since you know.
Well, by the time this goes out, it won't be secret, so don't worry.
Okay. Well, I'm also at the Last Tackle. That's coming out next month, as we all know. That's what we all been waiting on, including myself. I can't wait to see that, but it's a chance for people to know my background, my city, where I come from, and how I first started off with this rugby league. People can follow me through social networks, and they think they know me, but I feel like the Last Tackle is going to be the chance for people to really, really get to know me.
Right, well, don't break any confidentiality on that. It wasn't that I was going to ask you about. It was the Rugby AM stuff that you've been doing.
Right, and that's what I was going to get to next, because with that, the Last Tackle, I've been trying to get in touch with Alex Simmons. First I'll say, Alex Simmons is a hardworking man, and he's one of the busiest guys in the UK, I'll tell you that. I've been trying to get in touch with this guy since last month, but, finally it came to life, last week. Last week I did a Gaddis guidance session with some lads from France. They came over for a week. I believe they played Shawcross under 14s and under 16s, and they also played Valley Boys under 14s and under 16s. This was my first time training kids who didn't really speak English, and it was kind of funny to me, and also a culture shock, because their coach had to translate everything that I was saying. So every time I would say, okay, we're going to step in the ladder or step this way, I have to wait about 5 seconds just to let the coach talk and tell the kids what's going on. I couldn't really even talk to him one-on-one. I had to really slow down talking, really do more hand signals. But it was a great time. The kids loved it. I also saw one guy, he was doing it with no shoes on, and it surprised me because that had never happened. To be honest, he had some of the best footwork from all the French lads.
Oh, that's fantastic. You're getting more and more international.
Yes, so Alex Simmons and James Buchanan, they interviewed me doing the drills and also just interviewed me how we doing now, telling me asking me what was my next steps in life, how am I loving rugby league, how's it been, over here in the UK, and just about the Amsterdam trip I took, and it's just more exposure. Like, I just been loving this, what's happening, and I just can't wait till that comes out also.
Well, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. And we saw you last, or I saw you last. You was at the Salford Toronto game, so you've got to see another one of the grounds in the UK.
Another one, yes, another one. This is my third. Well, I could really say my fourth Super League game. I'm going to count this in my books as a Super League game.
No, it's Challenge Cup. This one, Challenge Cup. You've got to learn Challenge Cup.
True. I'm only saying I've seen my fourth Super League team play at Salford. That was a great match in my eyes. It's always good to see the Wolfpack play because I know some of those guys on a personal level, and just to see those guys go out there and give it their all and show me their talents and what they have is it's always amazing. Sorry about the loss, but I definitely think the Wolfpack could have won that.
I don't think they did bad. I just think it's just that next step up, really.
Yes, you're right about that. And yes, you're right about that, playing at the League One level and then jumping up 2 levels, I can definitely understand that. You can see the difference because I just like I read, and I believe that, I read this and I forget where I read it at, but it was saying against the League One teams they've been playing, they were having breaks, and they wasn't used to. They were having breaks, but some of those breaks that they got is because they were League One teams, and when they come and face Salford, they didn't get those breaks because they were sound on defense and sound attacking the ball also.
Yeah. So it's all part of the game and playing with different divisions, which I guess is something that you don't really have in the States.
Yes, you're right about that. Definitely right about that.
And talking about the States, what's your big news for the States?
Okay, well, I know everyone's going to ask me why and when and how, but I have to take care of some things. But I'm going back home to the States, and first of all, I'm taking a firefighter's exam. That's one of the main reasons I'm going home for. But, I talked it over with a few people, and I had the plan, to try to start my own rugby league team. I'm not going to say it's going to happen today, tomorrow, next month. I'm just definitely going to start a foundation for it. I'm thinking about, there's a few names out there, but one name I'm really thinking of is the Cleveland Sharks, just because my first rugby league experience with the Shawcross Sharks and everything. And they also would like that too. I know some players that will definitely come out from the UK, from Shawcross to come to Cleveland and play. But I just want to lay down just some foundation and see what type of players I have in the city or even around Ohio that would love it, because me coming from American football, I know plenty of athletes in my same position that didn't get that shot or just trying to see what's their next step in life, so why not give these people the opportunity to play a different sport? I just want to take it in my own hands to be a rugby league ambassador. So I'm just going to first start with going to different schools, middle schools and elementary schools, just exposing the game, maybe at recess or lunchtime, just coming in with a few rugby balls and just introducing the game, showing them a few clips of how rugby league is, or telling my story, getting all started like that, just to expose the game like that. Then maybe also in the future, maybe a month or two from now, I was thinking of maybe holding a small tryout in Cleveland, or a developmental camp for open ages just to see what we have in the city for rugby league.
Well, hopefully you'll get your firefighter's exam and you can drag all the firefighters along.
Oh yeah, I even start a firefighters league after that. You never know.
You never know. The Cleveland Inferno or something like that.
That's true.
Well, good luck, Monty. It's been a lot of fun having you over in the UK, and I think anyone who's listening and anyone who's read about you wishes you the best of luck in your future.
I really appreciate that, and you've been supporting me since my first rugby league match to my last one. I really appreciate you and league culture for always having me and always, helping me expose myself and promote myself. I just want to say thank you as much as you saying thank you to me. I just want to say that everyone out there listening, thank you, and I'm not going to give up. I promise I will just keep going. It's Wake Hustle Grind, the brand. So just keep supporting me and keep following me on all social networks. And you just follow my journey. You'll see that I'm going to keep striving for success.
All right, and that's the end of the show. 60 minutes gone. And you're going to have to wait another month before I get a chance to talk to you again. But before I go, it's time to say, here's I Love My Game by Danny McMasters, which is available to buy on iTunes.
I love the game, it's in my heart and it's a part of me.